Hello, my name is Lala Nourian, a fourth year PhD student at Rochester Institute of Technology. I am presenting our paper titled as Investigating the Intersection of Cultural Design Preferences and Web Accessibility Guidelines with Designers from the Global South on behalf of my co-authors Vinaya Naikar, Dr. Kristen Shinohara, and my advisor Dr. Gareth Tigwell. Prior studies such as the work of Reinecke et al. Or Tang et al. Have argued that people from different cultural backgrounds have different preferences when it comes to design choices, such as preferences for colors or interface layouts. We call these preferences cultural preferences in our paper. To address different cultural preferences in design, some previous studies have proposed culturally inclusive design resources and practices. In addition, we also know that design choices can directly impact the accessibility of web design. For example, Patra et al. Demonstrated that a poor choice of color makes websites less accessible to people with visual impairment. So, given the link between cultural preferences with design and design with accessibility, does this mean that the cultural preferences influence accessible design as well, and how? If yes, do we also need culturally inclusive accessible design resources such as accessibility guidelines or tools? Let's provide a bit of background first. Studies from Barbareschi et al. And Linkson et al. Have shown that there is a bias in design resources because they mainly originate from the global north and the west. This sort of bias can allow a digital design marginalization, which, according to Seen et al., can exclude many user groups. And in our paper, we specifically wanted to know how this bias is applied to accessible design resources and whether designers from the global south face challenges in balancing accessibility and cultural aesthetics within their designs. In our paper, we call these challenges cultural challenges. However, research has not yet investigated the intersection of cultural design preferences and accessible design. Therefore, we aim to answer these research questions. First, what cultural challenges do the designers from the global south face during the process of accessible design? And what do the designers from the global south need in order to make the accessible design process more culturally inclusive? We conducted design and interview studies with 10 participants. Each participant first completed an asynchronous design activity, then we interviewed them to discuss their accessible design experience and the accessibility resources they used. At the end of the study, we analyzed our data using reflexive thematic analysis method. For the asynchronous design activity, participants were given 2 weeks to design a website and fill out a design diary, including a table, to indicate their design choices and accessible design experiences. We also provided example instructions for our participants on how to fill out the table. We invite you to read our paper for more detail on the design activity and the table in the design diary. We recruited 10 designers from the following 5 countries in the global south: Iran, Indonesia, India, Nepal, and Turkey. 7 of our participants were women and 3 were men. They had 5 years of design experience on average, and all of our participants had web design experience with some experience in mobile, desktop app, or graphic design. Our findings indicated that our participants face 2 types of challenges in the accessible design process when using the accessibility guidelines: design level challenges and higher level challenges. Design level challenges were related to typography and text, color scheme, and white space used in design. We found that accessibility guidelines such as WCAG for text design focused on Latin scripts, neglecting non-Latin typography needs. For example, I'm presenting a picture from a participant from India showing visual differences between English and Telugu written languages. The top line has text written in the Telugu language and its English translation is written at the bottom, showing distinct differences in letters, spaces, shapes, etc. We also found that our participants had to compromise and modify culturally significant colors to meet accessibility guidelines. For example, the picture in this slide shows two images stacked on top of each other with an arrow pointing down between the first and the second images. The participant from Iran highlighted that they had to modify the color of the text from the authentic khaki color as shown on top to a gray color as shown at the bottom because of the color contrast criteria of WCAG. And finally, we found that some cultures prefer denser designs, which conflicts with accessibility recommendations sometimes. For example, here I am presenting two web interface designs next to each other. The design on the left is from another participant from Iran without using any accessibility guidelines, which consists of a huge amount of text, less line spacing, and little white space between elements. The design on the right side, on the other hand, is made with the consideration of accessibility guidelines, which includes more white space between elements and lines of text. As for the higher level challenges, we found challenges related to educational gaps indicating a limited accessibility training for creating culturally inclusive designs in non-Latin typography design. And also challenges related to designer-client and designer-developer interactions when it comes to accessibility in design. We discussed that our paper is the first to demonstrate an intersection between culture and accessible design, which causes certain cultural challenges for designers in the global south. Therefore, the current accessibility guidelines need to be improved to be localized and culturally inclusive, as well as there needs to be more research and education on culturally inclusive accessible design. Future research can continue this line of study to improve accessibility guidelines and tools to better address cultural preferences in design, and to include diverse cultural perspectives in accessibility research and education. Thank you so much for your attention. Please scan the QR code presented in this slide to access our paper for more detail.